This video is proudly sponsored by Gamersgate. Download games anytime, anywhere. Visit Gamersgate.com.
Right now, ElderGeek.com fans can enjoy a 5% discount on purchases at Gamersgate using promo code IAMANElderGeek. Hello everyone, my name is Randy Asenchuk, I'm the editor of ElderGeek.com, and you're here to watch me test drive Pid. I managed to put a few hours into Pid on PC today. It released today on October 31st, 2012 for PC, Xbox Live Arcade, and Mac, and in about 1 week it'll be available on the PlayStation Network. On all platforms it's going to be available for $9.99. On PC, if you'd like to pick it up, you can get it through Steam or Gamersgate. It was published by D3, and it was developed by Might and Delight. A lot of people out there are probably wondering who Might and Delight is. This is officially Might and Delight's first game, however, they are veterans to the video game world. The core team behind Bionic Commando Rearmed joined together, and they are the brainchildren behind Might and Delight. Pid is a puzzle platformer, but with some pretty unique new game mechanics, and with Bionic Commando Rearmed within their pedigree, you're pretty much guaranteed some hardcore retro style, just ridiculously hard puzzle platforming, and that's exactly what you get. But before we get into the gameplay, let's dig around a little bit within the options. In the options, you will find Player 1 controls and Player 2 controls. Yes, Pid is a two-player co-op experience, however, you're not going to be seeing me playing any co-op with anyone. Unfortunately, I don't have a co-op partner here at home. My son is entirely too young and my wife doesn't game anymore. In the settings, you're going to be finding the graphics quality. Graphics quality is just broken down into low, medium, and high. If this were a AAA game, or if this were just a three-dimensionally heavy game, I would probably hold this against it a little bit more. It is kind of sad that it's just broken down into low, medium, high, but it is just a 2D platformer. I'm going to try to not hold it against it too much, but I do always enjoy to see as many graphics options as possible. Low, medium, and high might work for most people, but not everyone. Resolution, once again, all your standard resolutions are here from 800 by 600 all the way up to 1920 by 1080. Screen, you can actually do windowed or full screen, which is nice for those of us who actually do some streaming on Twitch. The windowed mode actually works well on for XSplit. I just caught myself saying the word actually. Someone brought it up in the last episode that I say the word actually a lot, and so now whenever I say that word, I feel terrible. Languages, you have English, French, Italian, Dutch, and Spanish. Music, now music is going to be a point of contention. Music is 0 through 100. The music within Pid was put together by this very talented team of artists. It is a very custom soundtrack. It's a very jazzy and bluesy soundtrack, but it's not going to be for everyone. It fits the game at parts, but in other parts it doesn't fit the game as well as others. I guess that's the best way to really put it. Sometimes it's very upbeat and it keeps the action flowing. Other times it's so slow and melodic, and because the game has a very ethereal visual quality to it, it will make you feel a little bit sleepy. That would be great if it were a film, but it's a video game and you want to be awake and you want to be playing the game and you want to be absorbed in the game. You don't want to be falling asleep with the controller in your hands. So if you don't find the music to your liking, it is nice that the music does have that option there. Sound, 0 through 100, that sound generally just covers everything. Aside from that, there's the credits and the how to play, but the how to play is pretty simple, and I'm going to go through that with you right now. Welcome to the world of Pid. This is your main character. His name is Kurt. Kurt is a young boy. He's basically a geek. He is dressed up in his school suit, but he's wearing his baseball cap on the way home with a letter K on the front of it. If you're wondering like I was, or if you're wondering like I am, he looks an awful lot like Mario, but dressed in blue, and of course a young geek instead of an older plumber. But Kurt has some pretty cool mechanics. You can see them being used right now, aside from jumping, obviously, because this is a platformer, but he can do these gravity beams. And the gravity beams are thrown. They can be used for defense purposes like this. You can also float up in them. And here you can see me actually putting them on the floor. I put them on the floor so I know exactly where they will go, but you can also throw them on walls. Oh, and there we go. You can't go into some of these, into the enemy's beams. It counts as a portion of your life. There is an infinite number of lives in Pid, so dying, while it might be a hassle during the standard exploration levels, isn't so bad. It isn't as frustrating at times. It gives it a sort of Super Meat Boy-esque quality where you can just keep doing it over and over and over again until you get it right. The stars in the game are a currency. It's not like Super Mario Brothers where you get 100 of them and you get a 1-up. Again, there's infinite lives, so you don't need that. But the currency can be actually used to buy more bombs, different power-ups. You can buy armor for him so he doesn't die in just one hit. He can die in 2 or 3 hits. And here you can see the beam works on walls as well. But you're not here to see the dreamy sequences. The game does have a very ethereal, very sleepy, dreamy appeal to it, which is nice. But let's actually get into some hardcore platforming. After all, that's what everybody is after. I will say this. The game starts up a little slowly, unlike Deadlight, which I did the test drive for yesterday, where Deadlight gets right into the nitty-gritty at first. This has a slower wind-up. Here you can see some of the items that you can buy for your backpack. That's what your currency and your stars is for. And well, this is the super beam. You can throw it down. It's almost like an explosion. It's like shooting a rocket at your feet. The art style in this game is absolutely fantastic, and one of the nicest things about this game. What I truly love about this game so far is not only is it a hardcore platformer, and not only is it really hard, and not only is it very challenging but rewarding at the same time. It's hard, but it's not overly frustrating. But what I really love about it is it's going to make a great kids game. You don't need to worry about who's in the room watching you play this. There's no gore, there's no guts, there's no swearing or anything along those lines. For all intents and purposes, this is almost like a perfect NES game from back in the day. Now, the game does ramp up the difficulty. Here you actually seeing me taking a hit there. You can only take 1 or 2 hits. If you're wearing a bit of armor, you can take 2, but with no armor, you can only take 1 and you die, and you got to go back to your checkpoint. Checkpoints, fortunately, are pretty... There's a ton of them. You don't have to worry about them. Oh, here we go. Some bad guys actually die from your beam if you chuck them down into the tube. The checkpoints are pretty... They're pretty liberal in how often they dish them out. However, the bosses in this game are brutal. I would honestly say that the bosses in this game are Bionic Commando level of hard. In fact, if you took all the Bowsers from all the Super Mario games and jammed them all together into one room, they would all still be easier than one of the bosses in this game. The bosses are that hard. I will say that is the one thing that I found most disappointing about this is it goes from moderate difficulty to super hard difficulty with these bosses. For those people that are actually looking for a challenge, it's great. For people who are actually just looking for a standard platform, that does stretch out the gameplay a little bit, but it might be a turnoff for some. I stuck through it. Some of the bosses are totally weird, but when you beat them, it's such a moment of, yes, I did it, and totally worth going through. Here you can see some of the enemy design. It's actually really cool as they're almost like scuba suit dudes that are just flying in from the foreground and background to drop bombs on you. The game does whip out some fairly devious little tricks here. You can see I'm trying to, there we go, manage this box by actually using the beams up and down. Yeah, God, oh, hang on here. Okay, here we go. The game really does pour on the enemies at you from time to time, just from all directions, and this is one of the more fast-paced levels. And I will say this, just to kind of get back a little bit on the checkpoints ideal. Typically, one checkpoint works for an entire board. Since this is a longer board, it will be diced up into multiple checkpoints. Here's a great section I'm just going to burn through. It shows off the platforming with no platforms mentality. You can use the beams on the sides to push yourself left and right, and then of course without touching the spikes you can sort of finagle your way up and get your way through. It's a wonderful mechanic, and it gets addictive. Pid is broken into about 7 worlds, according to the developers, with several subworlds within. I've seen about 4 of them so far, and they have kind of put me through the ringer. This is not an easy platformer, but it is a very fun platformer. It is very visually impressive, and I can probably recommend it. I don't want to call this a full video review because obviously I haven't completed the game yet, but based on what I've seen so far, you can consider me pretty impressed. It's not going to be a game for everybody. it's basically going to be for puzzle platformer fans only, and those people will really love it. The storyline tacked onto it is not the best, but it's enough to guide you through these different worlds. It's about how Kurt leaves the bus and tries to get back home, back to his planet, but in order to do so, he's got to wiggle his way through random environments controlled by these robots, and there is a conspiracy to stop him at every step of the way. The story could basically be thrown out, but that doesn't matter. It's the platform puzzles that everybody is here for, and they come in spades. So if that's what you're into, I can definitely say you could probably check it out, and for $9.99, price isn't that bad. Alright everybody, I'm going to be wrapping this one up for tonight because I feel like at this point I might be beating a dead horse. Overall, Pid is definitely a positive experience. It has some amazing visuals, not just in graphical fidelity, but in art style as well. It is very impressive. You can see the roots from Super Mario Brothers, from Little Big Planet, and a few other outside sources as well. The controls are very tight. I played it on the Xbox, or I played it actually on the PC with an Xbox 360 controller. Everything was mapped intuitively, and I have zero complaints about it. The game mechanics, specifically the gravity beams, are wonderful, and they are used very, very well. Once you actually understand the mechanics, they never slow down, and they only ramp up in not only difficulty, but in fun as well, so that's great. I feel that it's priced perfectly at $9.99, so even if you buy it at full price, I think that it is a great buy, but also if you find it on sale, even better. And one of my favorite points about this game, it's kid-friendly. You can pop it on, you don't have to worry about who walks into the room, you can actually play two-player with your kids, you can actually have your kids play it, and you don't need to worry about anything like cursing, swearing, nudity, graphic violence, or anything like that. It is a great kid-friendly game, but it's also still very challenging. So if you want your kids or your little brothers and sisters to have that same NES type of feeling that you had when you were a child, then this is going to be a perfect game for you. On the negative side, there are some difficulty spikes that will be a turnoff to some, specifically with the bosses. The levels themselves will actually be moderately difficult, but when you get to those bosses, the bosses are a real trial. And considering that Kurt only has one hit point most of the time, getting hit one time during any particular boss fight is... It's tough to kind of get over that challenge. The game ramps up kind of slowly as well, so if you're just picking up the game and you're starting through it, you're kind of wondering, wow, when does this game actually start to get better? The first, I want to say 30 minutes of the game are very slow. It does a good job of teaching you all of the mechanics, but I think it does it with a little bit of a heavy hand, especially considering how hard it gets later on in the game. The soundtrack is either going to be a hit or miss for some. For me, I think it was a little bit more miss than it was for hit. It'll probably be a different story for other people. There were some levels that I loved, but the rest of them, kind of like I said, they made me yawn a little bit. And here's something I didn't notice a little bit earlier, or I didn't make note of earlier. There's missing a level select function. When you actually complete a level, I would love to be able to go back and actually replay some of these levels without needing to go through the entire game again. Thanks everyone for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the section below. If you have any specific questions about the game that weren't answered in the video, I'll answer as many questions as I possibly can. If you like or dislike the video, let me know why. There's always room for improvement. But that ought to do it for me today. Thanks everyone again. I'll talk to you all soon.